background information before the fun starts here. This was essentially developed together with Honor and Glory, another Cynthia Rothrock movie by Godfrey Hall, as we see here. And this had Hong Kong investors on it. And executive producer Grandmaster Tai Yin wanted to make an American martial arts picture, essentially using scouted talent, but also name talent like Cynthia Rothrock to market the movie with. And merging it also with a Hong Kong style, a Hong Kong stunt crew. And thus, Honor and Glory was born. Undefeatable was born the same year or the year after. And it's also a B-movie action that's merged with a vicious serial killer plot. So here you go. It's a Hong Kong-style movie, kind of, and also a bona fide YouTube sensation because one of the fights is very famous from this movie. And it's a popular movie so many years after it was made. It's a cult classic. It has life, and it's due to its own energy present already in the movie, circa 1993. And it was also shot as a separate edit for the Asian market called Bloody Mary Killer that was dubbed into Cantonese. And we're going to stop here. Here's a scene that actually is not in the Hong Kong cut. What you will find out as we talk about Undefeatable and Bloody Mary Killer, Undefeatable, the US edit here, has this subplot with Don Niam's wife going to a psychologist and being very scared, afraid for her life because her husband, the sweaty man, is abusive and engages in death matches. This is all cut from the Hong Kong version. None of this is left. Only bare mentions of it, which is a shame because I don't know what you guys feel, but these actresses, not these guys, these actresses, the psychologists. Let's just look up the names here. It's a lot of cast to keep track of, but it's Anna is played by the wife is played by Emily Davachak, and the psychiatrist Dr. Jennifer Simmons is played by Donna Jason. I think they are the best actresses in this movie. Actors.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
She's a fantastic crier, Emily, actually. And it's not a cry in the sense of, she cries just, a tear rolls down her cheek as, she talks about this abusive life she has. And, he abuses her as hard as he abuses people in the ring. So it's a very dark start to the movie.
Yeah, definitely helps to establish his character. But before you even see him in a scene, other than the fight scene, it really helps sort of establish what kind of a guy he is.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like Cynthia Rothrock is first on screen in this version. She's introduced like 10 minutes in, what have you. But apparently the opening fight that we only see bursts of was shot during a 13-hour stretch for Don Niam and the other actor. That was the first day, and already, the legendary Don has tapped into intensity more than just fighting intensity. You know what I mean? And it's certainly affecting to see her cry over this. I mean, it's domestic abuse is a nasty thing in real life, and I think Godfrey is tapping into something, but he's tapping into cheesy, wonderful B-movie acting as well.
Yeah.
And we'll obviously talk of the various actors here, and we have the introduction of John Miller playing Inspector Cop Nick DiMarco. And John is, extensively interviewed by a Mike Fury, interview we'll actually link to, and we'll talk of John's career all throughout this commentary. I gotta say, by the way, that that whole opening fight scene and the opening with the psychologist is replaced in the Hong Kong version by Robin Chu's first scenes with Godfrey Ho, and then it cuts into this robbery scene. So that's all completely replaced with alternate footage, as you'll see in the members only section. You'll see all that alternate footage. That is really shit.
We have a few tearaways from a Judas Priest concert.
It's not every day you see a middle-aged gang member as well. So
dude, it was the 90s.
And still, Don's hair seems like it was stuck in the 80s, despite Godfrey insisted that Don Niam's hair was that long in the movie, and
It's
it's classic.
immaculate.
It's actually absolutely spectacular. Before we go into Cynthia, I gotta mention one thing about this scene. I like that these, I think it's odd that these are not underground fights. They are actually organized alleyway fights, illegal alleyway fights. And these guys, the suits beside the suit, they're not very intimidating.
Not really.
I mean, and look at this guy with the chains all over him. It's going to be a theme. The fighters that Cynthia is fighting, they have odd stylistic choices behind them, so to say.
Yeah.
Almost looks sci-fi in design, but this is obviously not sci-fi. It's the 90s. Look at the wonderful.
Or in
90s.
like a ghetto S&M makeshift outfit,
Uh,
which is what I always wear to street brawls myself.
It's like a weird kind of West Side Story or something.
But while we watch this fight, anything we want to start talking about Cynthia Rothrock a little bit before we go into something else? So go ahead.
Yeah, Cynthia was born in 8th of March 1957. She started training in martial arts at the relatively late age of 13. But, she displayed a natural gift, which ultimately led her to 5 black belts in different Korean and Chinese styles. And she's also 5-time World Karate Champion in forms and weapons from 81 to 85. So she certainly knew her stuff. And
speaking of knowing her stuff, I mean, I like the bursts of action in this movie. It's not extensive Hong Kong action, but I like some of the short, fast bursts that Cynthia responds very well to. In the scene with John Mill early in the robbery, there's some bursts as well that I like very much. They're not like boring American style martial arts action. They're actually
Done
like,
well.
da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, it's done well as well. And some of the stuntmen take really hard hits later in the film.
Oh, absolutely, the Hong Kong stunt guy. So,
Yeah.
And Cynthia responded to that very well. That was, by the way, the no retreat, no surrender moment where where he says, "Don't touch the ground." It's like that. No retreat, no surrender.
Classy.
So but going back to Cynthia.
Yeah, 85 was the year which she made a film debut as well, in 24 Hours to Midnight. And she began the Hong Kong chapter of her career with the Korean directed Yes Madam. And then in 86, she was busy in Hong Kong as well, made Millionaire's Express, directed by Sammo Hung and featuring just about everyone you could care to think of.
And she was not, by the way, just the background guaylo fighter. I mean, now Cynthia was already respected.
Yeah, I mean, then there was that. There was Right and Wrongs with Young Bu, and directed again by Corey Yuen. And she had even worked with Wong Jing in The Magic Crystal as well.
Sweet film.
Yeah,
I would rather say I think she worked more with action director Tony Leung than
yeah,
with Jing.
probably, yeah.
That's just my theory.
It was her and Richard Norton in that one.
Yes. And Robot Andy Lau, who does very well in the action department in Magic Crystal. Watch Magic Crystal for Cynthia and Richard, but definitely for Andy Lau.
As well.
Yeah, so go ahead, David. I think we still have time to do some more Cynthia when we're watching some of the worse actors. Yeah.
The
first notable film for her of the new decade, the 1990s, was China O'Brien. Directed by Robert Klaus of Enter the Dragon fame. It's pretty much considered the film that made her name internationally.
It's actually a good film. If you guys have seen it, I haven't. I mean,
yeah,
is it worthy of like whoa, I can see a breakthrough here?
Yeah, it definitely seemed like there's a fairly well mounted production. It had a good a fair budget behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's the start of a huge decade. She made a total of about 30 films in the 90s. So it was definitely the high watermark of her career.
Mm-hmm.
It made quite a few sequels. There was a couple of China O'Briens, you know, a couple of fast getaways.